The Nikana Prime in all of its classic beauty is still amazing to this day, sporting an equal 28% crit chance and status chance with an above-average crit multiplier. Predominantly slash, of course. Oh boy, I believe stat-wise this might actually be the best of all katanas. Nikanas. So, let's get into the build. First things first, you all know what it is, the Archon Shards. Now, for this, none of them really matter except kind of the Tower Forged Green, which also is not mandatory. It sees benefit because of the, melee exposure pet build, also not super spectacular, it's just a viral priming pet, but I am going to show you what I have regardless, just so that way you are aware. In addition to this, the Warframe Arcanes that I have are also unnecessary. But I would actually, for this scenario, recommend Arcane Avenger, because we are running a crit build, and, for the influence build, we're still getting a decent amount of crit, so I would recommend that. Though, again, not necessary. And, well, Arcane Rage obviously does nothing for it, so if you wanted to, you could put bonus base damage. You could put bonus attack speed. I don't know the names of either of those two for the melee arcanes, but I do know they exist. So, the Warframe Arcanes can be whatever you like. It is your choice. Now, Nikana Prime build. This right here is the single target build that I was using before, Heat Slash and melee exposure. Now, I'm going to explain a little bit of why I chose what I did, but there's nothing super niche or specific you have to do with this at all. I'll also be showing melee exposure for those new folks who don't know what it is yet. But the reason that I have Volcanic Edge instead of, the 90 heat mod is because we don't have Weeping Wounds, and while Galvanized Elementalist does help with status chance, that's only after a few kills. So, that's why I'm running a 60-60, to help out with that. Because you're not always going to need Weeping Wounds, you just need enough status on certain weapons to just proc a few, especially if they do plenty of damage. And because this weapon already has a very nice base crit chance, I'm not running a whole bunch of heavy crit. That's another reason why I have Galvanized Steel, so that way I can bump it up a bit, but also have a boost to my crit damage, which is already at 6 times. So, I figure why not bump it up more, since I don't need to dump into crit. I'm already hitting solid oranges and reds. Blood Rush, of course, push it even further. Gladiator Vice, though. The reason that I chose that is because, to me at least, there isn't really too much of a difference between Gladiator Vice and Primed Fury, at least for this specific Nikana, right? This specific melee weapon. It is drastically different on other melee weapons, it definitely is. But for this specifically, there's really not much, and just as is the way that you see it, it feels really good. It's a nice, solid attack speed. But again, like I said with the Warframe Arcanes, you can always buff up the attack speed just by slapping the melee attack speed arcane on your Warframe. As you know, all of my builds are templates. But this is what worked for me, and it worked well. But other than that, nothing really too special. Or specific to really talk about with this one. Now on to the melee influence build. Also, I was still experimenting with it a little bit. That's why I still have Prime Fury on that, because I just forgot to change it to Vice before I recorded, so, it is what it is. If you notice here, I don't have a whole lot of crit damage on this because, well, I don't have that much space. So what I opted in for was to keep the Galvanized Steel, so that way I could have a decent amount of crit damage. Keeping Galvanized Elementalist for the obvious reasons it's an influence build running on Blast, and keeping the Shocking Touch as a 90, but keeping the Blast as 60-60s, to help with status chance, of course. Now, another thing, by the way, I'm also going to show influence here in a second, again, for those new players. Blind Justice, I particularly just enjoy that one. For those of you who are curious, it doesn't really matter, honestly, with the stance, whatever feels good for you, but I personally like blind justice, so you can swap around whatever you want and try stuff, but I would have had Gladiator Vice in the Prime Fury spot, had I, thought about it. Now, if you have other means of getting melee attack speed, you could switch Prime Fury out or Gladiator Vice for more base damage with Prime Pressure Point. You could put crit damage, you could put, I don't know, maybe even extra electricity if you wanted. I mean, truthfully, it's up to you. These builds are not set in stone. But one thing that I will say is the whole reason I even made this, specifically I made this build, is because my buddy asked me for a recommendation on mod setups for the Nikana Prime. I usually don't use Nikanas. Most of the videos that you've seen, I have my hate scythe. Beautiful, beautiful hate. It keeps me warm in the winter. And the reason that I don't run Nikanas very much is because of that heavy attack. It is literally the only thing, because it pisses me off so bad, dude. The heavy attack on every stance always lurches you forward. And 50% of the time, it almost feels exactly, maybe closer to 60-40, maybe 70-30 or sometimes, you will whiff your heavy. So if you're perfect 100% of the time with your Tennokai, it will either lurch you past your enemy, or it will send you off in some weird random direction. And I hate that. And it makes even less sense to even have it that way because we have the stereotypical anime ninja slash, the samurai dash, whatever you want to call it, by, and this is just for Xbox, terms of buttons to press, holding down the left trigger, forward, and then, hitting B. We already have that, so why do we have a forced version of that? It ruins it for me. So if DE updates Nikanas, or at least the stances, to not do that, and to just have you just swing a heavy attack without it altering your movement at all, this probably would have become one of my top 5 melee weapons to cycle through. Hands down. Hands down. But the other reason, though, it wasn't just because he asked me, how to mod it. That was half the reason. The other half of the reason why I even got it in the first place to mod it is because I am a hands-on learner. So if I have it in my hands and I'm messing with it and changing stuff on it, that is how I learn and discover the best. I mean, sure, I could have told him how, throw mods here and test stuff, but I really do need to have it in my hands. So I figured I might as well do that. And then I also figured after the fact, well, if I'm already putting all this effort and forma into it, I might as well make a video on it. Because honestly, despite the really annoying heavy attack mechanic, it's actually really fun. It's really fun. And we can still do, Tennokai and immediately slide right after activating it, or just doing a heavy slam. And that takes out the annoying part of it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope this will help you have some more fun with the weapon. And I hope you have a good day, a good night, and may RNG be in our favor.